exhale should always be twice as long as your inhale. Practice. My name is Cole. Are you breathing? My name is Cole, and I am also a former cheerleader. No pictures, no pictures. My name is Cole, and I'm happy to be here with you all and share our work. I'm the executive director of the Brown Boy I'm speaking in craziness. The Brown Boy Project. I'm not going to sign everything, but I wanted to start with ASL because it's incredibly important. I learned sign many years ago, and it's incredibly important to my worldview of how I see the world. Working in the deaf community is actually where I first came to understand a sense of my privilege as a person of color, as someone who is queer, who grew up in incredibly white communities where we were like the only black person in town. I was the first black person to go to my elementary school. They had a school-wide assembly, and like this is the 70s and the 80s. I had known just a tremendous amount of experiences that had really shaped the lens around race and gender for me very early on, and had come to see and experience myself as someone who lived through a place of marginalization. And it was profoundly awakening when I was 15, and I worked for the city of Berkeley, and by chance got to meet all of the deaf kids who were mostly brown babies. And all of their interpreters were white, and I was fascinated. And they were so drawn to me, and I was like the only one willing to learn, and I began to learn sign. And as a result, then went to school and actually studied it and did interpretation for a short time. And I think that part of what we do in the Brown Boy Project is really thinking about the nature of privilege and power as a resource. How many folks, just show of hands, have heard about the Brown Boy Project? Good job, marketing team. Okay, let's test that one more again. Okay, one more again. How many people know what we do? Show of hands. Oh, wow. Okay, great. One of you. What do we do?
So, verbally, but I do not know what you do and how you came into existence.
So we are the new kid on the block. And I feel deeply grateful to be here in this work. We have an organizing model that I think is really new. We work with folks 35 and under, all people of color. We bring together masculine of center women, so folks that identify as stud, AG, macha, tom, boy, cop, all of these different ranges and ways of knowing ourselves as people of color, beyond just the word butch. We also work with trans men of color, queer men of color, and straight men of color, all in the same spaces to really talk about and unpack masculinity and privilege and power and think about its implications for our movements. We just in 2011 celebrated our first year anniversary. We were started in 2010, and our first cohort, our first large cohort, we had 13 brown boys. Enzi is here, and Isaac is also here, who are both brown boys. Isaac was in the first cohort. We didn't have a website when Isaac came. We also had Elakshi was here yesterday, and Stacy was also here yesterday, who were brown boys. And we work for racial and gender justice, and the way that we describe gender justice is that as people of color, as immigrants, as refugees, as queer, trans folks of color, historically our people have been controlled through the manipulation and just deep, profound control of women and girls' bodies. That has been one of the primary mechanisms that our communities have been controlled over time. And we're still living in that system, and it's part of our responsibility to try to dismantle it. And in the same way that we talk about whiteness and race, that if racism is actually going to be dismantled in this country, white people must take a fundamental role in dismantling the systems of privilege that exist so that it actually can be broken apart. We believe that the same is true around gender, and that those of us who have access to privilege around masculinity have a role to play in it. It's super controversial. A whole bunch of brown folks don't want to come together and talk about why we can't have a conversation about the oppression we experience, and that's not to say that we don't address both, right? We believe deeply in what it means to support each other so that we can be strong, but that radical and vibrant change really comes from people who are willing to take risks, who are willing to take a stand, who are willing to be controversial and to challenge and push an envelope, and to do it in a big and bold way. And we're trying to build a community of folks that do that. So in the last year, there have been some key values that have really, I think, helped us to launch onto a national stage so that we're doing this work. We plan for 1 and 3 year marks. Beyond that, we feel like it's kind of fun and magic. We're doing a lot of guessing. We believe really deeply in the idea of spaciousness. We only plan for half to 2/3 of our year at the beginning of the year, because we believe that strategic opportunities present themselves to us as organizations and as leaders, and that we're only really able to take advantage of them when we step into them, and we can't do that if we are already at capacity at the beginning of our year. Mm-hmm. We believe really deeply in failing brilliantly. We fail as big and as hard and as fast as we can, because we know that that is actually what leads to the level of innovation that is transformative. We celebrate our failure, and as folks along a masculine spectrum, that's really hard. Yeah? There's a tremendous amount of competition that we have with each other that is fundamental for us to jump over in order to do this work, and we believe that failing brilliantly and supporting each other in that is an important strategy to unlearning that habit as a movement and as individuals. We cultivate a culture of innovation. We empower our brown boys. They run the show. They do amazing work. In any given cohort, we'll have an aspiring police officer, an executive director of a social justice organization, a butcher from rural North Carolina. Shout out to some. And media moguls who run a YouTube channel, who are 22 and 21 and have 23,000 subscribers around the country. We tune in every week to learn about gender and what it means to be a stud. We believe in making spaces that are open around class, that are around race, that are open around gender. We also hold multimodal spaces, which is really challenging as people of color, and this goes to the point that you were just making, which is that essentially when folks of color get together, there's still a culture that dominates. It's either a Black culture, it's either a Latin culture, it's either an indigenous culture, it's either like an East Asian culture, a Southeast Asian culture. One of the challenges that we have to practice as people of color is, what does it mean for someone else's culture to be in the center and to honor it and respect it without appropriating it, and to just chill, and then to be able to step into the center when it's our turn. And to think about, when we're in the center, how are we creating points of entry for other people to live in our culture with respect and honor? We are scrappy. We have hella hustle, but a whole lot of polish. We believe in being big and massive with very little resources. Our website, check it out, it's brownboyproject.org, BOI. We built it for $600. It doesn't look like it though. We believe in setting a new benchmark around what it means to perform, to really build a movement in this country. So many of us have become accustomed and live in environments of mediocrity, and we have gotten comfortable in them. And we believe that it's time to set a new bar. And we know that when you set a new bar, people say to you, that's not how we get down around here. You were rocking the boat. And they either beat you down or they push you out. And we believe in building a community of people who are like, I'm ready to fly. Are you ready to fly? Let's do this. We cultivate a culture of resourcing. The first leadership retreat I paid for out of my pocket. If we are going to build this movement, it has to be ours to own. Mm-hmm. We cannot build a sustainable long-term movement without resourcing it ourselves, we cannot be afraid to ask people to resource this movement. You cannot let your fear of asking for resources and money stand in the way of the deep liberative work that we need to do. It's critical and essential. And I think it's hard. our work, and happy to talk with anyone offline about how we do that, but it's essential to our work. We went last year from raising $1,600 individually. We're on target to raise $20,000 this year. The last thing I just wanted to say is that as we think about what it means to build a movement, we're really wondering kind of where are the seeds of transformation in the movement. And I think that that's one of the really powerful things about being here with you all, is that you've been sharing work that often is in the shadows. That our work holds the most promising seeds for the future of the entire movement, but because it's in the shadows, it doesn't actually get replicated, it doesn't get built. And so as we think about what it will take to build our work, we have to recognize and acknowledge that there are many roles within the movement. There are folks who are using service strategies, advocacy strategies, organizing strategies, that we need to be having conversations with each other about how those strategies build off of each other and are integrated. We also really need to be honest and frank about the limitations of the 501c3 structure in terms of building a social justice movement. And we need to think about the ways in which we are building and setting a new framework that inspires people to think outside of boxes. One of our brown boys who's here, lives here in Minnesota, is named Lawrence, and just came out of our October cohort.
LT.
So y'all know Lawrence. And at the end of the cohort, I was driving him to the airport. And he said to me, you know, Cole, you read about these moments and these times in history, these leaders and people who came together to set something in motion that had a profound impact on who you are as a person. He said, I never thought in a million years that I would sit in one of those rooms. And not only that I would sit in one of those rooms, but I would be given the opportunity to play a leadership role. And that for many of the brown boys, the sense of transformation that happens is because when we realize the deep power that we have to create a movement for ourselves, irregardless of what is happening with white folks outside of our rooms, we actually have the power to do all the healing we need. I'm just going to close with a piece that was written, by June Fong Mejia, who's also a brown boy out of the August 2010 cohort. And this is an excerpt from a poem. And it's in our health guide called Freeing Ourselves, which is for gender nonconforming folks. It's amazing, and I have copies back there if people want to see it. Taking pride in our reflections, knowing from now, we are more loved than we know. We are stronger than we think. We hold the power to transform ourselves. We hold the knowledge of creating safety. We hold the responsibility to practice accountability. We hold the tools and paintbrushes of our new world. We hold the joy and music along the way. We hold the collective power. We hold the light. We hold the space. And we hold each other. The way our ancestors hold us. Not always clear, but ever present. Thank you.